Hello, and welcome to my lesson on verbal phrases. I'm so happy to have you here with me today. So we're going to be looking at phrases. Now, a phrase does not have a subject and verb. The reason for that is, as we know, if something has a subject and verb, it makes a sentence. And a phrase is not a full sentence. It's not even a clause. A phrase may look sometimes like a verb, and it may act as a noun, but it does not have a subject and verb. The and is what is very key here. Now, the particular kind of phrases that we'll be looking at today are verbals. Now, verbals used to be a verb, so they're words that we normally would recognize as verbs, but now they're acting as another part of speech. So a verbal may be acting as an adjective or an adverb or a noun. And we will be looking at examples of this later in our lesson. Now on to gerunds. The first type of verbal we're going to look at is a gerund. Now a gerund ends in ing, and it acts as a noun. That means it can do anything a noun can do. So we've learned about positives or subjects or direct objects or an object of a preposition. All of these things that nouns can do, a gerund can do it too. Now, let's look first at a couple of examples. So we can say running is fun. Now, if we look at this sentence, we might think running, that looks like a verb, but I'm not convinced it is a verb. But then we look here, is. Okay, is definitely a verb because a verb is a word that either tells us state of being or action. Now, expresses action or state of being. So is our verb and running is our subject. So running now, but what kind of thing is it? So running is a subject, so it's acting as a noun, and it ends in ing, so it is also a gerund. Now we can also look at a gerund acting as a different part of the sentence. So I might say, I like reading. So what is our subject? We have I as our subject. We know that as a pronoun. We are comfortable with it. That's easy, right? Now we have like. Like is our verb. Then we have like reading. Now, this might be a bit tricky because this looks quite similar to when we have a helping verb. And so what is an example of a helping verb? So when we have a helping verb, you might say, I was running. So I was running. I is our subject, and was running together makes one verb phrase. This is different from a verbal. Was running. So was is helping us understand the tense when this action was happening. So these are working together. And you'll know that it's a helping verb because it will be a be verb. So what are our be verbs? Our be verbs are am, is, are, was, and were, being, been, and be. So that's how you can know if it's a helping verb. And typically those are something that we feel very comfortable with. Now back to our original example. I is our subject, like is our verb, and then we have reading, which looks like a verb, but it would be odd for us to have two verbs back to back. And that's when we realize that reading is not exactly what it seems in this case. So if I said, I like cake, we would recognize cake immediately as a direct object, since cake is a noun. That means reading also is acting as a direct object, but it is a gerund because it ends in ing and is acting as a noun. So it's a direct object and it is a gerund. Now let's look at a couple more examples, just so we really get it in there. So if I have her hobby, writing, relaxes her. So we have her hobby. This is our hobby is our subject, and her is a possessive noun because it's her hobby. And then we have, oh look, 2 commas. Remember, typically we have 2 nouns, 2 commas for appositives. So that's a little tip off that this is an appositive. So it's acting as a noun, ends in ing, and that means it is a gerund. Then we have relaxes, which is our verb, and then finally we have her. Now, another example would be, and this one, I will give you a moment to try to figure it out before I tell you the answer. So, she loves walking to the store. She loves walking to the store. So first, we should look for our subject. So tell me if you can figure out which word is our subject. Have you got it? It is she. And then next, we should look for our verb. But since we know that we are hunting for gerunds, we know to be careful to look out for something that looks like a noun, that looks like a verb, but is acting as a noun. So we have loves, which is our verb. And then which word next do you think is our gerund? We have walking. Walking is a direct object here, and it is also a gerund. And then we have to the store, which is a preposition or a prepositional phrase altogether. So that's an example of another kind of phrase. So today we're looking at verbals because you guys already know prepositions, but now you recognize that there's another type of phrase. Now let's look at some phrases. So far we've looked at gerunds as just a singular word. Now to make it a gerund phrase, there has to be a group of words following the gerund. So it's very similar, but we will have some extra words at the end of our phrase. So let's look at our first sentence. Running in the park is exercise. So we have running in the park. So if it was just running is exercise, so I'm covering up the words, we would recognize that as a gerund like what we saw earlier. But now we have running in the park makes it together a gerund phrase. So this whole thing would be a gerund phrase. Is our verb. And then we have exercise as our predicate nominative. Then we have our second sentence. We watched a video about learning verbals. So our subject is we, and then what did we do? We watched. So we watched, so watched is our verb. What did we watch? Well, we watched a video, so that makes video our direct object. And then we have about. About is a preposition word. So we have a preposition, and then we have learning verbals. So usually a word following a preposition would be the object of the preposition, which is a noun. And so learning verbals, this makes it a gerund phrase. Next up, we have participles. Now, participles also can look very similar to gerunds, and we will cover that confusion later. Now, a participle is a verbal, so it's going to look like a verb, and it acts as an adjective. And we remember that adjectives describe nouns or pronouns. And then, so it means a participle will have to come before a noun and describe it. Then we have also participles end in ing, ed, or an irregular ending. So with regular verbs, we have past participle and present participle. So remember how before I said was running? Now here, running is not acting as a participle. It's part of this verb phrase, and it's helping us understand the tense. Then you could also say, that's not a good example. So was running would be an example, and then he had run. So that would be another example. So this is the past participle, and this is an irregular past participle. We can also look at dance or dancing, because that's a bit more regular. So I am dancing, or I was dancing. Earlier. Or had danced. These are all examples of past or present participles acting as verbs, and where the key is the ing or the ed or an irregular ending. Now, if you're unsure of what the correct participle ending is for a verb, you can always look it up in the dictionary or just Google it, because we live in this wonderful age of technology. I mean, you're watching me on video, so the whole world is your oyster. Now, let's look at participles acting as adjectives. So this is participles as a phrase or a verbal. So let's now look at our first example. I bought frozen pizza. I bought frozen pizza. So we have I as our subject and bought as our verb. Now we have frozen, which looks an awful lot like a verb, but it is not acting as a verb because it is describing what kind of pizza. So did I buy a fresh pizza? No, I bought a frozen pizza. So frozen is acting as an adjective. It's a past participle, so it is a participle. And pizza is a direct object because it receives the action of buying something. And so it answers what I bought, and it's following a action verb. So to buy is an action verb. Now for our second example, running water sounds nice. So a lot of people like the sound of running water. So we have running water sounds nice. So maybe if you look at the sentence, you're not quite sure what the subject is. You feel a little bit confused. There's something that looks like a verb at the beginning. Maybe that's a gerund. I'm not sure. So let's look first for the verb. And this is a key if you're having trouble finding out what's happening in the sentence. Maybe look for something different. So sounds, we know that's a verb and an action verb. It's ending in S, which lets us know that we have a singular subject. So what sounds nice? Oh, it's the water that sounds nice. And then running is an adjective that is describing the water. So what kind of water sounds nice? Is it sitting still water that makes no noise? Is it dripping water? Oh, it's running water. So running water is an adjective, and it is our participle. Now next we're going to look at some phrases. So for our participle phrase example sentences, we have Phaedo, written by Plato, tells us about Socrates' death. So Phaedo is our subject, and our verb is tells. So Phaedo, written by Plato. So this is describing Phaedo. So maybe you're not familiar with the Phaedo. So it's describing about it, that it was written by Plato. And so written ends in en. That makes it one of our irregular endings for the participles. So this is a participle phrase. And then us, what does it tell? It tells us, direct object, and then about Socrates' death. Then we have running to the store, Jack tripped on the rotted wood. So this is an example here of a participle phrase that's also an introductory phrase, and you'll see participles used like that quite often. So running to the store, it's describing Jack, what Jack is doing. What about Jack? He's the kind of guy that will run to the store. So we have this participle phrase. Jack is our subject. Tripped, because he was running, so he tripped, as our verb. On the rotted wood. This is, so on is a preposition, which makes this a prep phrase. And within that prep phrase, we have rotted, which is describing wood, but looks like a verb, but it's an adjective describing wood, which is an object of the preposition, which makes this a participle. So within our second sentence, we have a participle phrase and a just one-word participle in the second part of the sentence. Now for something that I find really fun, which is, because I mentioned before that participles and gerunds can look very similar because both can end in ing. A gerund always ends in ing and acts as a noun, and a participle can end in ing or ed or an irregular ending and acts as an adjective. We can see how something that ends in ing, the same phrase, so we're going to look at this phrase, dancing in the kitchen, and we're going to see it in a sentence acting as a gerund and then acting as a participle. So let's see if we can guess. So we have dancing in the kitchen is fun. So let me find our verb is, and then our second sentence, dancing in the kitchen, Kate began to sing. So we have began, which is our verb. Now, I'm gonna wait a moment and let you guys try to guess which one is the sentence with the gerund and which one is the one with the participle based on how those parts are acting. And you can pause the video if you need more time. So let's look at our first sentence. Dancing in the kitchen is fun. So here, what is fun? Dancing in the kitchen. Dancing is the kitchen is our subject, and it is also a gerund. Now, here we have dancing in the kitchen, Kate began to sing. Who began to sing? Kate. So Kate is our subject. So that means dancing in the kitchen is not our subject because we already found our subject, but dancing in the kitchen describes Kate. So what kind of person is Kate? Well, she's someone who dances in the kitchen. She sounds really fun. So dancing in the kitchen here is acting as an adjective and a participle phrase. So here we have two phrases. They look the same, but depending on where they are in the sentence and what they're doing, they can function as different things and then have different identities. They are different parts of speech. So here it is a gerund acting as the subject, and here it is a participle phrase acting as an adjective. Now, finally, for our last kind of verbal phrase, we have an infinitive. So an infinitive has the word to plus another verb, so to blank. And an infinitive can act as a noun, adverb, or adjective, which means they can do many more things than a participle or a gerund can, because it could be a noun, adverb, or adjective. Remember, an adverb describes a verb, adjective, or another adverb. Adjectives describes nouns and pronouns. So to be a scholar is a good goal. So, look, to be or not to be, that is the question. So to be a scholar, so to be, we have to, and then a verb be. So to be a scholar is our infinitive phrase. So it's an infinitive. Is our verb, and then a good goal, which is our predicate nominative. So here, to be a scholar is acting as our subject. So here we see our infinitive acting as a noun. Next, we have her goal to be a scholar is good. So we have her goal, which is our subject, and then to be, so you have to be, that's an infinitive, so to be a scholar is our infinitive phrase, is our verb, and then good is our predicate adjective. So her goal to be a scholar is good. So now we need to think, okay, so here it's not acting as a noun. Now we need to decide if it's an adverb or an adjective. So what is to be a scholar doing here? It is not describing is, but it is describing her goal. So what kind of goal is it? It explains the goal. It describes the goal. That means it's acting as an adjective. So then here we see how the infinitive is acting as an adjective. And then we finally have, she worked hard to be a scholar. So our subject is she, worked is our verb, hard describes how she worked, so that means it's an adverb. And then to be a scholar, that's an infinitive, so to be. And then it also describes worked, so it describes why she worked. So why did she work so hard? She worked hard to be a scholar, which makes it an adverb. So adverb. So we see how infinitives can be easy to recognize because it's to plus a verb, and then we can have it act as a noun, we can have it act as an adjective, and we can have it act as an adverb. Now, one thing about an infinitive, though, is that they can look like something else, which is the fact that the word to is also a preposition word. So he walked to the store. So he is our subject, walked is our verb, and then to the store. The store is not a verb, so it's actually, that should be a key. So what's following the to? It's describing the direction. It is a preposition. This is a prepositional phrase. So make sure that you do not get prepositional phrases using the word to mixed up with infinitives. So now we have some more example sentences, and I would like you to pause the video and see if you can figure out what parts of speech we have here. Where are our infinitives, and are they acting as a noun, adverb, or adjective? And whenever you're ready, you can just start the video again. So now I'm going to go over the answers. So for our first sentence, I want to go to the park. So I is our subject, want is our verb, then to go. So we have to plus a verb. That means it's an infinitive, and it is receiving the action of want. So what do I want? I want to go. It's acting as a direct object, which means that it is a noun. And then we'll want to go to the park. Now, the park is not a verb, it is a noun, and it is suggesting direction, so where? To the park. So this means this is a preposition. Now we have for our second sentence, he studied to do well on the test. So he is our subject, studied is our verb, because what did he do? He studied, and he studied to do well. So to do well, so we have to do, so infinitive, because to plus a noun, and then well. Well actually gives us a little hint, since well is always an adverb, so to do well. So why did he study? He studied to do well. So this is an adverb, and then on the test is a preposition. And then finally, we have now is the best time to start. So now is acting as our subject here, is the verb. The best time is a predicate nominative. Now is the best time, and then to start. So to plus start, that's to plus a verb. So we know that this is a infinitive. And then to start is describing time. So what kind of best time it is? It's the best time to start. It is acting as an adjective. Well, I hope you enjoyed this lesson on verbals, and you've learned a lot about gerunds, participles, and infinitives. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I will be sure to help you. Thank you and have a great day. Bye.